welcome, Ryan. Thank you so much for joining us.
Sure.
If you could share your full name, title, and organization, please, that'd be great.
Yeah, I'm Ryan Palo. I am a senior software engineer at Flashpoint.
Okay, Flashpoint. I'm not super familiar with that, but I'm sure you're going to tell us more about that. Would you briefly describe what led you to your current job and maybe a bit about your job history? Any experiences that weren't the best that led you here, or how'd you get here today?
Yeah, so I started, I went to college, got my undergrad to be a mechanical engineer. And then I went into industry as a mechanical engineer, was one of those for about 7 years. And that was great. That was fun. I really enjoyed it. The last company that I was at, well, they got bought and driven into the ground. It wasn't great. Um, and so at that point they like let everybody go. And so I was looking for a new job. I had kind of in the background because it's always been kind of a hobby. I've been programming as a hobby since college, and then kind of while I was like the last few years before the end of that last company, I had been getting my master's in computer science just because I was like, at some point, I think I want to either teach or have a software type job. So I'm gonna get this master's so I have it. And then, once I like ended that job and was looking, I was applying at both mechanical roles and software roles. And then this was like kind of mid-end to COVID, so hiring was weird. And so, it was a good few months of sending out applications like one at a time or a couple at a time and, getting rejected. And then I finally got to the point where I was just like, yeah, that looks like something I could do, and was just sending out like just buckets of applications, and Flashpoint was one of them, and they liked me enough to interview me and hired me.
Okay, so a significant amount of time as a mechanical engineer, most of your career, and then you shifted to software engineering because you just found it interesting and got your education in it, and now that's where you are. Very cool. What education, training, and or experience did you have to have in order to attain your current job, and maybe mechanical as well, if you don't mind sharing?
Yeah, so for current job, for the software industry in general, I think it's a lot looser in that a lot of times if you have the skills, you can usually find something. And so there's a lot of different, like you can go the traditional route of like college, getting a degree in computer science or software engineering. But you can also, they offer boot camps. I have opinions on boot camps, but like, it's like pay a few $1,000s and it's like an intensive 6 to 8 week course. And then at the end of it, they're like, we'll hook you up. We have like a network and we'll get you interning or working in a company. And that has mixed results. And then you can also just like, if you have the drive to teach yourself, and like, it's all on the internet now. And so, YouTube is a great resource, and other, whatever, Pluralsight, Coursera, whatever the kind of courses are that you can take to, if you have the programming skills, a lot of times you can find something. And so that's, I would say in my case, because I had no job like experience on my resume for software, even though I had, 7 years of being kind of a lead mechanical engineer, I would say my master's was what got me, kind of kicked me over the edge to, yeah, okay, let's at least interview him because he's got his master's in computer science. And then when I interviewed me, I think it was more about the fact that I was able to demonstrate that I'd been programming for a while. I had the skills, and they were like, he's able to do the tasks that we need him to do. So that's, the fact that I didn't have any work experience as an intern at a software company or something wasn't as big of a deal. For mechanical, I would say that one, there's a lot more fundamental book knowledge in that it may be harder to go like just show up and be like, I'd like to be a mechanical engineer, please. Like there's like having a degree, I would say, is more, because there's the coursework is a lot more defined it's an older field. And so, things like structures and stresses and forces and design and that kind of thing those are all kind of, they've been able to write books and curriculum and so I would say my college degree there I was able to get I started the day after graduation or the Monday after graduation for my first mechanical engineering job.
Really, very cool. I've spoken with a lot of students lately who don't really even know what a mechanical engineer does, or even a software engineer. They're very vague notions in their mind. And, I'm located in rural Arkansas, so there aren't a lot of software engineers or mechanical engineers even that live where I am. So could you give us a basic explanation of mechanical engineering, or a basic explanation of a degree in software engineering, those two, or not a degree, but those two areas?
Yeah. So mechanical engineering is at the very base of it. It's the kind of you study more the foundation. So in contrast to, let's say, a civil engineer or an aerospace engineer, where a civil engineer, you're looking at stresses and forces and design principles as you go to design structures, infrastructure. Aerospace, you're looking at those kind of forces and design principles as you go to design airplanes or things that fly. Mechanical is kind of the foundation of that. So there's a lot of overlap. And so you're studying the basics of forces, how to look at something and go, hey, is that going to break? If we have a toddler jump on that, is that going to like break off the wall or something? And being able to like go from should be okay to being able to calculate that toddler. You can't have a toddler over 100 pounds or that'll snap, and being like relatively confident about that. And so that's vectors, forces, calculus, physics. The nice thing there is that like if you get to be if you get the knowledge for being a mechanical engineer, again, I'm biased, but it gives you a strong foundation to do pretty much anything you want in the engineering world that deals with the same kind of structures and forces and design, because you can kind of you already have a toe in, and if someone says, hey, I'm going to teach you the specifics for how to apply that to buildings, or I'm going to teach you how to apply that to airplanes, you can kind of pick it up because you've got the baselines there. And so that's kind of why I chose it. I didn't know what I wanted. I knew I wanted some kind of engineering, and so I went mechanical because I figured it was the broadest like job pool of like applicable to a lot of different jobs. And I would say after doing it that's true. That's 100% true.
Okay, so I still think that it may be a little bit vague on what are those jobs. What would you be applying for? What are those job titles that a mechanical engineering degree would qualify for?
So anything where you need to design a thing to do a job. So my first job was in turbo machinery. So I was helping to design effectively fan blades to compress natural gas. Or pumps, effectively the blades and the stresses and the fluids, like as this goes through the pump, it's going to liquefy because it's getting cold, and there's some physics behind that. And so how much is going to liquefy? How efficient is that process going to be? But that could be anything. You could work at a chair company and design the wheels for their chairs. And I like to say, so I feel like this may be the case for a lot of or most fields, where when you first start out, my dad was like, yeah, as you start out as a mechanical engineer, you're definitely going to just like be designing a screw, like picking out which screw is going to be able to like hold something together. And that's 100% true. like you got to go, like you start small and you're like, I'm going to pick out the wheel that is right for this chair based on who's going to be sitting on it and what the requirements are there. And then I've done the math and I've designed wheels, and you've been the wheel guy for a year, like then you move up and you're like, maybe I can take on the whole like base assembly and how those work together, and because those systems are bigger, and when systems are bigger, they talk to each other. But like I said, it could be anything. So it could be that there's robotics, which is a huge section of, especially now, a huge section of mechanical engineering that touches electrical engineering and software as you're writing code, but you're also like soldering resistors onto motors and then running that all to make arms move to pick up, like maybe in a factory, automation is huge. So like picking up, for example, vials and that kind of thing. And then I would say one of the other big areas of mechanical engineering is HVAC. So heating, ventilation, and air conditioning. So that's a lot more about temperatures and fluids and flow and like how big of a fan do I need to put on this if I'm going to keep this building that is this big and has this many people in it warm, and this building is in like Alaska and it has whatever, like that, and then you see that starts to touch civil engineering and building stuff. And so, like I said, it all bleeds together a little bit, but the idea that if you need to design something, which is just picking how big or how much or which one to get, and in order to do that, you need to answer questions, and those answers usually involve math. That's engineering.
Okay. So someone who's ideal for this field would have a very, very strong understanding of math and love it, I would assume. That's very, very critical.
Maybe. I would say if you have a deep love of math, you will there are parts of mechanical engineering that you will be really happy with. That's why I did it. I loved vectors and calculus, and so I was like, I'm all about it. And I continue to love that part. But it's very, very possible, especially if you either work in the right industries or the right, like, because you could work all the way in the like engineering office for like picking stuff and specking stuff, and I would say that's heavy design side, and that's much heavier in the math and computer usage, because you're doing simulation to like kind of help you guess when things will break. That's more math side, but as you get closer to when things are manufactured, there's engineers all the way along that process, and so you could work in a machine shop, and then the biggest math you need to know is like half-inch, quarter-inch, like what kind of screw, what kind of end mill are you going to use. But the math there, like the closer I got to manufacturing, the less real math I was doing, and the more like fake. That's about a 3/8 of an inch kind of math that like you can get away with. It's a lot more gut feel, estimating, understanding, and being able to, as long as you can learn from people and understand patterns. That's I would say even if you're not great at math, there are a lot of places for you to find a home in mechanical engineering or engineering in general.
Okay. And let's jump over to software engineering. What would you say are the essential soft and hard skills of a software engineer that you've found in your time spent there?
Yes. So I would say being able to Google things well, honestly, is like one of the biggest skills. Like I go into most things like, I wonder how to do that. And most of the documentation is online somewhere, and you just have to find it and then be able to apply it to your use case. And then the other one is programming is all, in general, algorithms, which is just following steps. And so if you find, at the end of the day, you're writing lines of code that say, do this thing, then do this, and if this value is 2, then do this other thing, and then wrapping that into being able to go from that to tell this robot how to turn when it's getting close to a wall, right? Because that effectively breaks down to read some data from your like distance sensor, and if it's real close, if this distance is under 40, then turn your motor, run your motor to turn right or whatever. So that being able to algorithmically think is important, but I say it's also extremely learnable in that, like I said, you can go on YouTube and find a like intro to programming course, and you'll be like writing Python in less than a week.
Interesting. Okay. I wouldn't have thought that. So could you share what like an average day looks like for you now in the role you're in?
Yeah. So for software especially, and so for my job specifically, but I think this is pretty common in the industry, is it's much more asynchronous. So we have, most days we'll have for me it's morning because we're all over the country and the world, but for me it's 8:30 in the morning, kind of like they call it a stand-up, but it's like how's everything going? Is anybody stuck? Anything that anybody wants to raise is like an issue. Otherwise, like, what are we all working on? And then after that, like I just put my head down and answer messages every so often, but I'm mostly writing code, and or like planning a project in which I'll have to write code later. So that's most of my day, and then intermixing like fixing customer complaints here and there. Like somebody says, like, hey, this is broken, and so we take a look and try to unbreak it. The nice thing I would say for me specifically, so at my mechanical job, I was very customer facing, where I was like on the phone with customers all the time, and getting yelled at them some of the time, or getting yelled at by them some of the time. In this role, I am deep in the back end of the engineering team, and so we have like 2 or 3 layers of people in front of me that get yelled at, and I just get to like, here's requirements, do the thing, and it's my favorite. So that's yeah. Did I answer? I feel like, did I answer the question?
I think so. Definitely helps us better understand what a day looks like comparative to from what you've been in, and what maybe would be a front-facing job for somebody who enjoys being in the or like face-to-face with people or talking to people a lot, versus someone who thrives in that environment where they get to be behind the scenes and they get to help make the thing work, but they don't have to be, like you said, customer facing, or
Right.
they have other people to do that particular part of the work. So that's helpful.
And there
Uh,
are jobs too with like where that are sales engineers effectively that like, yeah, they know how to design a pump, but their day to day is not designing pumps. It's helping customers pick pumps, and so they'll interface with customers all the time because that's what they like to do, is help the people like decide faster, better. Like here's how to use our products and design stuff with our products better, and so that's, I mean, that's certainly a route for if you get into engineering, but you're like, you know what, I wish I was talking to people more. That's definitely, there's a route there.
what would you say is the best part of your job?
2 things. One is probably the most. There's one is that there's visible results in that, like I did a thing, and now there's a website that shows my data, or like there was, I guess, and this is I'm allowed to, I'm supposed to say I am I'm doing this. I'm supposed to say I am not speaking on behalf of Flashpoint. This is my opinions only. I so that covers that. This is public domain. A lot of the stuff we do is kind of secret, so I have to be careful. But this is public knowledge. There was going to be some guy was posting on somewhere that he was going to go shoot up a mosque or something in New York City, but he posted it online, and we found it, and we told whoever we told, and they went to his house and got him before he, and he had a whole bunch of like AK-47s and stuff, and they got him before he went and did it. And so like being able to be like, hey, like that was like, I picked that post up, or hey, I didn't, that was not me, but I have data in the platform that could do stuff like that. And so that's, I would say one thing is like knowing that what I'm doing is helping people is cool. And then the other thing is like when you write code, it's kind of magic in a way that like at a certain level, you know what the code is doing, but then you click into the website that you made and you place an order for a pizza, and you're like, man, I'm a freaking wizard. And that's like that. I love that feeling of just like, yeah, I know how it works, but it's still magic.
Yeah, I can completely see that. You're creating something, and then it does this thing. You made it do that. As simple as that. I'm sure it's much more complex than that, but very cool. What would you say is the most challenging part of your job?
I would say so. The computers make things go fast and big in terms of data wise, but what that means is if you break it, it's a really big deal. So like the fact that we've got these systems that are online and they're running and they're scrolling through and they're handling and getting data out of like millions of web pages and blog posts or forum posts or whatever that we're downloading. And so if I was to push some code into production that there's a bug in that like breaks, like it just throws an error and takes down production, that's, well, aside from the fact that that's maybe alerts to law enforcement that aren't getting through because the posts aren't coming in, so they're not getting through, so people are missing like life-threatening situations, which is not stressful at all. That's also, it's also like there's this huge backlog, this huge system that I broke accidentally. the only like saving grace there is that, in a like a well-run engineering organization, there's stuff in place, versioning and stuff, so you can go, okay, undo what I just did for a minute while I figure out what I broke. But it is definitely like every time I push something to production, there's that like 5 minutes of heartbreak or of like heart attack as you see like, oh, is it going to work or is it going to break? And you do stuff to try to mitigate that, but it's still a little scary every time you try not to break something.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. I'm not sure you shared what Flashpoint does, and so you've kind of touched on it a couple of times, but it might be helpful because I have another interview with someone else who's in software engineering, and their world is very different than what you've mentioned, and so it might be helpful for us to understand what's the big picture that you're a part of.
So Flashpoint is a security company specifically about protecting companies and people, but I think most of our clients are companies. The idea is we have, through several different sources and means, excuse me, sorry, I have hiccups, and like ways of collecting things. We are going through the like things that are just on the regular internet, things that are on the dark web, things that are like deep, like black market. We're talking like anything that's on the internet, chat, that kind of stuff. Anything that's open and available to be collected, we're collecting it, taking a look, and then we have our customers can set up. They can search through those collections to find stuff that they're interested in, but they can also set up alerts. So if somebody says, "Hey, this bank," if somebody posts, "I'm selling 500 of this bank X's credit card numbers for sale that I stole from somebody," that bank, if they are a customer, gets an alert, and they see it and they turn those off before they lose whatever $100 million in credit card like fraud fees or whatever. And so yeah, so that's there's kind of personal safety and fraud and crime and like video game cheats. So some things are a little more mission critical than others, but like that's generally what we do is people have things that they want to protect and they don't want to be necessarily be talked about on the dark web. And so we let our customers know if they're getting talked about.
Okay, I think that's very helpful. I have a better understanding of what you're doing.
So yeah, I'm specifically on the team that does the collecting, so managing the engines that are going through and collecting the data.
Okay, so that's what you're doing right now. You recently changed into this career path. What do you feel like your long-term career goals are, Ryan? 5 years, 10 years? Are you content with what you're doing right now, or do you have some different goals?
Yeah, so I really like writing code, and I want to keep doing that. So I think it's kind of twofold. One of is I just want to go basically as far as I can down what's called the independent or individual contributor tree of like I write code, and in the future I'll write bigger code for bigger things, and have it be better, and have more people under me as I manage the writing of that code, but not necessarily people route as much as writing code. So I like that a lot. The other thing that I really like is teaching and mentoring, and so like I have kind of a background goal of becoming some sort of either professor or teacher, mentor, or even in that kind of senior individual contributor role, like mentoring new hires as they come in and kind of raising their skills and like providing code feedback or helping them plan a project or whatever that kind of means as well.
Yeah, I love that. What advice would you give to students who are trying to figure out what they want to do with the rest of their life and find a career they enjoy?
I would say plans go out the window super easily. So like don't agonize too much over just like if you make a decision and you hate it, then change. And like you're gonna have changes and you're gonna have probably plenty of time to check out multiple fields. I say that as someone who has been like, nope, I'm gonna try something else. And so like I would say, rather than being like, oh, what I decide my major is as a freshman in college is gonna like dictate the path of my whole life. It's really not. Like, if you decide you get halfway through and you don't like it, then switch majors. And if you just get all the way through and you graduate and you decide, I talked to so many people who are like, yeah, I got my degree in X, but I'm definitely not doing that. Like, I knew somebody and they hooked me up into this department and now I'm doing this, and I picked it up on the job and I love it. And so, like, I would say that's like change will happen. And the other thing is to be open kind of for looking out for that, when for like opportunities, and be open, look out specifically for things that are outside your comfort zone. Like, if this conference is coming up and we're going to send a few people, and you're like, oh, that's really kind of scary, but maybe you go to the conference and you find out that you like talking to networking, and maybe you need to be in the marketing side, or maybe whatever, you go on this trip to a factory when you're an engineer and you're like, actually the manufacturing side seems dope, I'm going to do that. And so I would say be open to change, but also be open to the opportunities to check out more things and see what there is to check out.
Yeah, I think those are hard things, especially when you're a student, getting outside your comfort zone, seeing yourself in those roles, being able to really imagine yourself doing the things that these opportunities are being presented. I think that's tough, but that's good advice.
I have one more bullet that I missed, and that rolls into that, which is, for me, it's different person to person. I'm sure there's some people that are like not awkward and can like feel right at home right away. But like, for me, my time limit is like a year of like, I'm just guaranteed not going to be comfortable at a place for less than a year, or I know for a fact that I won't be comfortable for a whole year as I'm learning new things and feeling like meeting people. And so, like, give yourself that year or whatever it is that you feel like your time frame is, to settle in and really get good at, or introductory level good at, like, your job, before you decide, nope, it's not for me. Like, you can't try it for 2 weeks and go, this sucks, I'm going somewhere else.
Right. Yeah, it does take time to get that confidence built up. And I'm the same. It takes a little time for comfortability as well. What advice would you give students to prepare for an interview, especially as you've recently transitioned careers? I think you're a perfect person to give some advice.
I would say definitely prepare. That's my advice, is do prepare. Show up, know what the company does, as if you go in for an interview, like, have looked at their website and understand kind of who their customers are and what they're trying to do. And come with questions. So come with questions. There's lots of lists online if you look up lists for good interview questions to ask. But, like, come with questions like, what do you do? What's your day-to-day look like? What is your company trying to do in the next 5 years? I would say, just if you show up with questions, that's the biggest thing. Because if they ask you, do you have any questions for us? And you go, oh, not really. That's kind of a bummer for them, because they don't get to know what you're interested in. And then the other thing is, like, it's okay to either not know or not have some piece of either an answer to their question or a piece of experience that they would hope that you have. Like, it's, at least for me, in my experience, I haven't done this, but I as I've interviewed people too, like, don't pump yourself up or pretend like that something little was actually something really big and cool. There's a lot of people that, as they're writing resumes, they tell you to do that and like fluff up. Like, if you just like put some numbers in a spreadsheet, don't say you were like the data manager for as someone who's interviewed people, that's super duper obvious when you're reading a resume. You like read it and you read through the lines and you're like, yeah, that person doesn't do that thing very much or very often, or they've only done it once, or they did it as a hobby project and it didn't really work out. So I would say focus on the strengths that you do bring and the stuff that you are really good and passionate about. And if they ask you about the other stuff, say, you know what, I don't have any experience with that. But if you're excited to learn about it, tell them, I really want to get into that because that sounds really exciting to me.
I think that's great advice. It's okay to not know. I'm always, when I'm interviewing, looking for people who are lifelong learners and who can confidently tell me, I actually don't know the answer to that, but I have not known the answer to lots of questions. And by the end of the day, I can have it for you. Looking at that, I'd rather somebody just be honest about where they are in their knowledge and that they're willing to learn or excited to learn, like you said, than to fluff it up and tell me. And then when they actually get in that role, I have
Yeah.
underprepared what their training actually needs to look like. So
If I find out you lied to me, I will be way more mad than if you just say I don't know. I'll
yeah.
be, so.
Yeah, there's a good way of saying I don't know. It doesn't have to just be this, I don't know.
Yeah.
It can be a confident I don't know. So, what's the job outlook in your opinion for software engineering? Where do you see it going?
In general, I would say it's only going to get bigger. I would say like software engineering, like across the board, is going to vary a lot in the different, because there's industries that rise and collapse pretty hard. For specifically security and what we're doing at Flashpoint, I think that's only gonna, ransomware attacks and, these hackers shut down like all of LaGuardia Airport or whatever. Like that's only becoming more and more common, and so people are leaning more and more on tools to help kind of scale up and protect themselves as best as possible for when they do get hacked or when they're, whatever happens. So I would say, at least where I am right now is looking like there's nothing, unfortunately, lots of growth going to be coming.
Right. That makes perfect sense to me. So are there any opportunities with you or within your organization for internships, mentorship, job shadowing? I know you're not located in Arkansas, but I'm hoping that this series that we do can help anyone anywhere, honestly. So yeah, what can you share with that?
Yeah, so I think from what I looked up, our company, we definitely have, so one of the things we do is it's called Skill Bridge internships, which is people getting out of the military, transitioning into like civilian life. We do internships for that. I didn't see active internships for like people coming out of college or people leaving high school and looking for an internship or shadowing, that kind of way. That being said, like I'm super open to it. Like I said, I love teaching, and like I'll happily teach anybody to code that wants to, because I'm really excited about it. So and I think there's probably a lot of people here at the company too that are the same way, where they'll be like, oh yeah, I'd be happy to answer any questions or meet up or show you some things or provide resources for here's how to learn this thing or whatever. But speaking specifically for myself, definitely available.
Yeah, that's great to hear. What would you say to high schoolers or people who are interested in being mentored by you or learning more? How do they reach out? I think it's the hardest part about being a young person, even is get like doing that, finding those ends. How would you recommend they do that?
I would say, well, so in a general, how do you reach out for help and mentoring? Be specific and have done legwork ahead of time. So have a question that you want answered. So if someone just like without doing any legwork goes and messages me, hey, will you be my mentor? Like that's less good. Because there's like a ambiguous commitment. Like, what do you want me, like you want me every night for a couple of hours you want to meet together and teach you, or do you want just have some questions you want answered? So it's better to have done some legwork and then have questions like, hey, I'm working on building a movies website for my mom. How do I like install this thing, or how do I make it so that this box stops bouncing up and down when I refresh the page? Or whatever, or even if it's just like, do you have any tips for getting started with this technology? That's a more specific question that's very easily answerable, and then I can say like, you know what, that's actually a bigger question. Let's meet up for a couple hours and talk about it. So I would say that's probably the best. Do a little bit of legwork. There is, if you show that you've put some time in and thought about the question and what you don't know, it makes me want to help you more, although I don't not want to help you. So
yeah, that's all great advice, Ryan. I think being specific and like you said, having done some research, having a mentor in general is very helpful, especially when you have no one else in your life who has done this thing. You don't even know where to start. You don't even know what questions to ask. But doing some research ahead of time and then having some specific asks, I think is a great way to get started in that. So Great advice. All of this has been really great, Ryan. I appreciate your time so much. Is there anything additional that you'd like to share?
No, other than like I really strongly like I have strong feelings about anybody can learn to be an engineer. Anybody can learn to code. I would say if you're at all interested in learning how to code, just tell yourself, I'm going to start building a like number guesser game, and then start Googling and see. And I bet you'll have something by the end of a couple weeks, or at least you'll have questions and you'll know to start asking questions. But the rate at which you can learn something by just starting to like, don't read and like, oh, someday I'll learn to code, but like just start building, even if you don't know how to do the thing, and you'll learn so much from that process. Even if the project doesn't work out, you'll at least have learned a lot along the way. So
yeah, just get started. Start somewhere.
Yep. Start building.
Okay. Thanks so much, Ryan. I appreciate your time.
No problem.
Talk to you soon.